Biological clock on your wrist, making longevity obvious. Health and longevity is complex, with longevity mostly being the polar opposite of mortality. Therefore, optimizing for longevity equating to decreasing mortality. So here embedded is a tweet I made. It is my cardiovascular fitness in a single number, a number easily taken and daily updated, and easy optimization function minimize. Visible every time I look up time. Yesterday I almost didn't go to training, felt sick in a sauna afterwards. That night it dropped to 45. I'm speaking about my resting heart rate average of 7 days. And this is the next tweet here. In mid-January, I got a Garmin and it spit out my resting heart rate 7-day average at 52. I then went through one cycle of dropping it to 47, but back to 51, seemingly closely correlating to my actual health plan adherence. I managed to drop it again and currently it is at 45. So now the question is, what does this glancing thing on my Garmin watch, so I do have a watch face on there, which displays a few metrics, and one of these is resting heart rate. What does this do with me in my mind if I take a look at it every single time? This is what this blog post is about. Health research medical science just might be in its infancy. With Garmin's MIP display always visible, the display reflects ambient light, also has a backlighting. I now notice these metrics every time I take a glance at my watch. The displayed metrics are: the top bar turns red whenever I should move again. Then we have another number which is 727. It's the total activity calories burned. The more the better, easy to understand. Even better would be to also include the caloric intake, the net calories burned minus intake, which would then be an approximation of daily fat burn or build-up, provided all other things constant or constrained, but also just focusing on maximizing activity calories, leaving out the mostly constant basic metabolic rate, in my case about 1800, even though here is a note, even though most fitness trackers probably actually include your metabolic rate per hour also in what they give out per hour for a certain activity, for example. So if you have maybe 300 kilocalories burned for maybe 45 minutes of weight training or weightlifting, then the metabolic rate might be included in there. So it doesn't really make sense to just take the 1800 calories of your metabolic rate and then add your activity calories on top of it. But I'm not entirely sure how this works. Gives a number that one can better optimize through behavior. 114. So that's another number. It's, according to the watch face instructions, my maximum sustained heart rate. Despite running today with a peaking heart rate of 180, it still shows 114. Not sure here. So it seems to be a somewhat longer interval. Tuesday 14th, the date obviously. Nice would be already seen on other widgets, a countdown till your predicted death to increase alertness. 95, my current heart rate, not that important given that one ideally optimizes for function, not a metric that is somewhat latent. Still interesting, but with only 6 spots, heart rate seems not that important. 14, the floors moved, also not that important given I have taken stairs in 95% of cases up to the 5th floor anyway in the last few years, but also maybe not just one towards thinking. I mean, I also could include a few more mountain stairs into my daily routine, runs, bicycle rides. 49 at the bottom is the resting heart rate average over the last 7 days. This is the kind of metric that one wants, something that predicts longevity but nonetheless can be measured in comparably high frequency. The 7-day average is constantly revolving and updating once it is established. Therefore, compared to, let's say, yearly blood work, a metric that far better provides an actionable insight. If this begins to climb, either something is wrong or begins to be wrong, or it serves as a reminder to again take exercise more seriously, or something else might be wrong. Also a question, how low can heart rate actually go? Speaking of the resting heart rate average, according to this Guinness World Record, 27 beats per minute. The lowest resting heart rate beat on the record is 27 beats per minute, belonging to Martin Brady, UK, on the 24th of March 1969, who was tested at the Guernsey Chest Heart Unit, Channel Island, on August 2005. So I'm not sure from where it is then. Is it from 69 or from 2005? Nevertheless, but a few folks seem to go lower than that. So there is someone who posted something to Instagram with his resting heart rate at 25 beats per minute. But the time frame is kind of unclear, so this could be within a few hours, that it is as low as a few hours, basically as low as this. But I mean, then it's not the resting heart rate average over 7 days. So The 45 would be a completely different number. It would just be the resting heart rate at one given point in time. I don't actually know how low I can go at one given point in time, but the 7-day resting average is obviously something a little bit different because it's over 7 days. Bottom arc, green, and not just the minimum value you could find and then post it to Instagram. Bottom arc, green fills up as the step goal is approached, which is in my case is 10,000 steps per day. More interesting metrics. First, the constraints. Be measured or be importable to Garmin Connect, accessible for watch faces, predicting longevity, yet also somewhat influenceable. Your height, as an example, is not that malleable. Longevity is simplified as the polar opposite of mortality. Reducing mortality is thereby the optimization objective. VO2 max can be measured automatically during longer runs on flat surfaces, therefore does not need to be tested. According to Peter Attia, the people at the top percentiles of VO2 max have a decrease in mortality. So what I mean here with does not need to be tested is the fact that it also is continuously measured. If you run like at least 1 time per week, then your VO2 max is updated. So how it actually works on the watches is that they do not measure your VO2 max, so you do not have a face mask on and something measures the oxygen, but it's just an approximation of the different metrics you have. So how high your pulse is when you are running, and just a few other things, and how fast you are running also. And then compared to your weight, compared to your size and your height, maybe also including body fat. There are a few different formulas to approximate VO2 max, and this is what most of these fitness services are using. So Peter Attia talks a lot about VO2 max as the number one predictor of longevity. The problem is just I cannot access VO2 max on my Garmin, and for this reason, resting heart rate average seems to be the next best thing that predicts mortality, and this is also something Peter Attia actually mentioned. And another doctor on YouTube with the name of Rohin, also known as Medlife Crisis on YouTube, also said something very similar, that you should either take VO2 max as the best value, ideally measured in a lab, but of course, again, similar to measuring something else quarterly, maybe it's only one value. So if you already run weekly, then this might be the better option. So I continue with the text. Maybe also the average of 7 days or months, the maximum measured of all the activities with one. Currently, Garmin seems to only allow access to some metrics. All the Garmin watches need a heart rate strap to calculate VO2 max. Newer ones, the 2022 lineup, including the Phoenix 7 series, calculated without the need for a heart rate strap. So this is what I thought when writing this. This is actually not what turned out to be the case. So my watch can, so I do have the Phoenix 7, I do have the Phoenix 6S Pro, and my watch did calculate my VO2 max also. It just took a little bit longer. And it cannot take the health snapshot though during the day, so it cannot measure my HRV during the day, for example, which is exclusive to the newer lineup. Or for me specifically, I would have to get the heart rate strap. The ideal metric, biological age, as the combination of all relevant variables regarding mortality reduction that can be easily understood. I'm 103, yet my biological age is still 18, for example. Optimization problem with absolute numbers. What objective should a 12-year-old runner have? Also, minimize biological age? Probably not. Also, different metrics could be optimal at different ages. Therefore, the current rate of aging is an attempt to solve this. A value of 0.5 would mean one age is half as fast as everybody else. Negative values would result in a net age reduction, but only over time of the age reduction treatment. Simultaneously, dividing biological age by chronological age gives us out the average rate of aging from birth till now, which again would be a metric with a comparably easy to understand objective function. Minimize the average rate of aging. Approximation, Garmin already calculates a fitness age, which I assume is mostly based on cardiovascular fitness. It also takes into account your weight and also I think your body fat, which it sometimes gets from external scales like Withings, for example, or if you otherwise import data. Since I started wearing the watch, my resting heart rate 7-day average went from 52 to 51, then to 50, and in the last days, you might have guessed it, other values Garmin already offers. So it obviously went to 45, 46, and then back up again, as I mentioned in the beginning already. Other values Garmin already offers. So within Garmin Connect here on the website, so I have inserted a screenshot from the website, you do have a few different metrics. There are a few different things you can do within the Garmin Connect app, which you can display. So there are also reports you can give out, which are not direct metrics. Garmin tracks, but then gives you out as reports. And this is here, for example, fitness age, which in my case dropped from 22 to 18, and currently it is not updated any longer. Actually, it's not at 18 at the time of reading this. I mean, it is at the time of reading this, but not at the time of writing this, and I'm reading this a few weeks after. HRV status, somewhat predicting where one is on the seesaw between recovery and, well, not recovering. HRV stress is the thing that the newer watches can measure also during the day, similar to how the newer, I think other watches can also, I cannot remember which watches, can also measure HRV. The Galaxy watches cannot, I think. I mean, they do. I think for stress, they also establish a baseline. It's just not accessible within Samsung Health. Sleep score could also be somewhat beneficial. One problem with concentrating too much on sleep might be that to some extent, the sleeping performance is not in our direct control, but the control is more latent. Only by adjusting environmental factors, less light in bedroom, temperature and behavior, not eating 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, light exposure optimization, stimulant intake optimization, coffee 30 minutes before bed is not ideal, one can latently impact sleep score. Obviously, you don't want to only have 30 minutes before bed, no coffee, but due to the half time of coffee, I think somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, according to Matt Walker, it could also be maybe 5 to 9 hours. I'm not exactly sure as of reading this, but obviously you kind of want to avoid it in the late afternoon already. Therefore, ideally the metric would also be latent 7-day or monthly sleep score average would probably offer a more optimizable metric than the sleep score of last night. Garmin already offers 1 day, 7 day, 4 weeks and 1 year as time intervals, as well as the highest, lowest and average in terms of the sleep score. Respiration. Here one would also have to pick ideally a minimum value, since otherwise would result in a suboptimal incentive structure when taking the 7-day average. For example, the more active one is, the more effective respiration probably gets, but the more active periods during a given week, the higher the average respiration might be. At least if in the short term, the non-active periods of lower respiration cannot properly counterbalance the higher respiration in the active periods. Weight doesn't offer an easy optimization function. Lower fat weight resulting in lower overall weight, all other variables constrained, organ, bone, muscle weight. But if starting to work out to increase muscle weight and constraining other variables, absolute fat weight, organ, bone, then higher weight equals better. Body fat percentage. The problem is in the mathematics. Due to body fat being a ratio equaling the total fat weight divided by the total body weight, one can influence the ratio by either increasing or decreasing the numerator, fat weight, or the denominator, the total weight. So ideally, lose fat, gain muscle, assuming again bone weight, water weight, fluid and skin, other cells influenced by electrolyte balance, also weight of digesting food, urine. Similar to how losing weight is a universal approach, optimizing for better health only works if body fat is too high to begin with. Therefore, losing weight mostly, at least ideally, equates to losing fat. Therefore, losing fat, i.e. minimizing body fat, would be a better substitute in an optimization function that works in more cases. But then again, the problem with body fat, despite the advantage of putting the total body fat in relation to the total weight, is that it excludes by nature the information about the rest of the organic tissue. Here is the problem. If a 100 kilogram human is at 10% body fat, then 10% of the total weight is 10 kilograms. In terms of body fat. If now, for sake of simplicity of the argument, he gains 50 kilograms of muscle, then his body fat is 10 kilograms divided by 150 kilograms, equaling 6.66%. So far, so good. But if you now compare a 150 kilogram man at 10% body fat to a 100 kilogram man with body fat, and 100 kilogram is probably more applicable to men due to sexual dimorphism regarding height, then the 150 kilogram man has 15 kilograms of body fat compared to the 10 kilogram total fat of the 100 kilogram man at the same body fat percentage. Now, since a 150 kilogram man is much more inflated than a 150 kilogram than a 100 kilogram man, so I wrote it wrong here, one could argue he also needs more body fat, at least the subcutaneous fat on the skin, in order to not have paper-thin skin. But there is also other fat in organs, visceral fat, and this again is lower, more optimal. So the lower the visceral fat, the more optimal it is. The problem now is the more muscle for organ, bone weight, but probably not that malleable, therefore not a metric to use for nudging oneself into better behavior patterns someone has, the more total fat mass he can get away with at the same body fat percentage. The more muscle size and volume on a body of fixed size, the more spread the same skin and also subcutaneous body fat also is. Another among many factors to consider is if someone is twice the weight, either through muscle, fat, or both, all organs have to supply nutrients, etc. for twice as much organic material, even though different organic material proportion compared to original weight. Again, the bone density and the bone weight might be similar. The same heart, stomach, etc. probably holds up longer if having only half the weight of organic material to supply for, assuming again going from weight 2 to the original. The higher total body fat could be partially visible in areas whose perception are proportionally less impacted by the inflated body by muscle phenomenon. The hands, due to most muscles like a remote in the forearm, or the face, in the indicative value distorted by different skull sizes and shapes. Also facial muscles allow for distortion of this indicator. BMI is the ratio of weight and height, therefore fails to differentiate between muscle and fat, therefore only accurate for average body types. Therefore, for anyone actively trying to gain muscle mass, not a value to optimize for, since if you lose 10 kilograms of fat and replace it with 10 kilograms of muscle, then the BMI stays exactly the same. FFMI, another metric often used to calculate the likelihood that bodybuilders are still natural, not using performance-enhancing substances often banned in competition. The problem with FFMI is that it again doesn't allow for a maximization or minimization function. That would be easy to understand, but is dependent upon the body fat as an additional metric. FFMI alone, therefore, again is not really a usable metric in the sense that it would be a candidate for 1, predicting lower mortality, 2, being easily readable. Why? Whenever the optimum of a function is somewhere in the middle and not close to one of the extremes, also depending on where most people would start, the interpretation is somewhat difficult. In other words, a fat man or an overweight man or an obese man with an FFMI of 19 to 21 has a higher one than the skinny man with a lower mortality, but also lower body fat and also total fat, therefore probably a lower mortality. I took this fat man and skinny man out of interpretation from the internet, so I found a source here and it lists FFMIs at different body fat ranges, and then the descriptions are, for example, skinny man, average man, fat man. So I didn't just make up this thing. A new metric. How about total fat mass divided by height? Basically what BMI already is, just based on height. I think actually now there is something similar to this. I just cannot really remember it. I think Peter Attia mentioned a few other metrics as of recently, but as of writing this, I did notice. This would allow less for a higher total fat mass hidden under more muscle mass. Height is also the thing fairly constant throughout time, excluding growth period, slightly shrinking effect due to height decrease in intervertebral discs. Also posture might get worse over time. The metric ideally also would account for the body fat sex difference. Female breast tissue increases overall body fat, also higher total body fat stored at same height in females. Body fat percentage currently doesn't account for this, therefore doesn't allow for cross-sex comparison. Ideally, a metric chosen as one of the 6 would also allow for intersexual comparison and competition, not only intrasexual. Also eliminating the categorization question for people in between sexist genders. Currently, a similar muscle look or body look probably equates to 5 to 10% difference in body fat comparing males to females. So if I had to pick 6 values, then maybe these, also not leaning too much out of the windows. I actually don't know if this transfers into English. It's a German saying to not lean too much out of the window because it then could potentially fall out. Average aging rate till now. Biological age divided by chronological age. Curing aging means overall aging rate, overall average aging rate is what I'm trying to say, equals 0. Only valid after having reached the ideal age, let's say 18, before maybe equaling 1. At age 12, for example, biological equaling chronological equaling 1. So if you divide at age 12, biological divided by chronological, then it would result in 1. That's the argument. Also an argument to be made, until reaching the ideal age, age reversal is in general not a useful method. Despite methods of age reversal might still allow for treating other diseases while growing up, the age reversal stop is not a useful therapy goal until chronological age equals the ideal overall biological age. Of course, now if you individualize it and say a certain organ has another optimal biological age and you already want to stop aging this specific organ, for example, then of course it's a different equation. But overall biological age, this is what I try to look at. Despite being not either maximizable or minimizable once the optimal age is set, found one can reduce one's current age always to that. Therefore, it offers an easy optimization function in the definition area of ideal age till infinity, the optimization function being minimize chronological age to ideal age. Let's again just say it's 18. Similar to average resting heart rate, once the ideal value is achieved, one can retrieve information from the fact that it rose again, which is bad, easy interpretation. Let's just say the ideal age again is 18. Then ideally for the rest of your life on your watch face, obviously just a mini dashboard, it shows an 18 somewhere for your biological age. The best approximation for an automated calculation I found thus far is a service called Young AI. As of now, as actually of the next days, this service will be closing down and only will be available for B2B, and previously they had a B2 business to customer, so a B2C service which you could access. They are currently in beta and have already an app for iOS, but not for Android. I actually think they then made an app for Android also, which I then had installed on my device. It can unfortunately only be linked to either Fitbit or Apple Health. I could only transmit data via Samsung Health, Google Fit, or Health Connect, or Garmin, maybe also MyFitnessPal, but I was not able to connect some data. Resting heart rate, basically the minimum heart rate. Maximum heart rate over the last 7 days if taken from a year, then less incentive to really ramp it up this week. Net calories, the closest thing predicting what food intake and daily activity results in terms of body composition change. Maybe also 7-day average currently only works with manual food logging. Height, fat. Again, body fat or a more advanced metric like FFMI isn't a real fit, as the optimization function objective is not as clear. Body fat until critical, minimizing function. One could also make the argument that by simply cutting off the part of the function that is suboptimal, let's say 5 to 10% in males, 10 to 15% in females, we could use the rest of the body fat function for the purpose of minimizing till lower threshold reached, equaling ideal minimal body fat, similar to how we cut off the lower part of the biological divided by chronological age function. Some kind of metric indicative of overall strength would be nice. Example, volume lifted in the workouts in the last 7 days, but potentially incentivizes higher rep sets, or a simple index calculated from the 3 main strength training exercises, bench, squat, and deadlift. An approximation to this is the strength age, an app, service, or 6 gym machines in my local gym that actually calculates a strength age. So I can access this then via an app, and it just shows me my overall strength age based on these 6 machines, which kind of have an automated thing going on. So they are connected to the internet, and then you can pull and push, and they sometimes give you resistance, sometimes they give you the reverse resistance. So, and then they just calculate also the 1 rep max, so you can do a maximum strength test also on there. The nice thing obviously is that these are standardized compared to you deadlifting, which would be maybe if you cheat a little bit on the deadlift and your form is not that good, then it might be a little bit different compared to you sitting on this machine and trying to do it the right way. This machine also adapts to you, so, well, I don't know where these things are available. They just are available, and the service is called eGym. And 6 values already available in Garmin. And these 6 values are fitness age, resting heart rate over the last 7 days, so the 7-day average, maximum heart rate, 7 days average, net calories, muscle mass instead of body fat percentage can be imported to Garmin via tinkering with other apps, MyFitnessPal, Samsung Health, or directly with a scale from Withing or Garmin. Body fat is currently a more available and between services syncable metric. Is a more available and between services syncable metric than muscle mass, but still possible with Garmin already. Just not accessible for watch faces. And for strength, maybe ideal. And for strength, maybe total strength workout minutes per hours over the last 7 days, or daily average over the last 7 days, or weight lifted daily average over the last 7 days. Again, not yet in Garmin, but strength training reps and volume over the last week can already be displayed as a report in the web version of Garmin Connect. In terms of a strength metric, there is also grip strength, which is also mentioned by Peter Attia multiple times as an overall indicator also for longevity, but also for how strong people are. So this might be one easy to track metric. You just pick one of these. They are about €50 or $50 on Amazon, and then you can order them. And maybe some also come with an app. I already took a look at these. And then you can measure your grip strength, which might indicate also or correlate with other strength, other metrics basically you could try to standardize, like how much you are able to deadlift or how much you are able to bench press. In conclusion, in order to change behavior, one can make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, or reverse those to try to avoid behaviors. James Clear, Atomic Habits. Optimizing all the various aspects of health is difficult and can be overwhelming. Ideally, one would track as many health-related metrics as possible. Practically, the range of trackable metrics is limited by cost, time, practicality, and advancements of technology. Drawing blood every 10 seconds to track blood metrics is not practical, yet tracking heart rate every 10 seconds or even 1 second intervals already is financially comparably viable in wealthy nations for average individuals in wealthy countries, and therefore overall more practical. No matter where one starts on the journey to optimize one's health, obese, lean, yet lacking cardiovascular fitness, recovering from severe illness, or not recovering from age, simplification alongside attractivity, ease, and satisfaction, yet one could also choose other words, increase the likelihood of the intended behavior change. Biological age and its reversal until optimality, despite its flaws, might be the metric that can be most easily understood by most people, even with no specialized knowledge or even further academic background. If opting for one metric, biological age is probably the one to choose. Simply cutting off the part of the graph where minimization is not optimal allows for minimization. You are as old as an 18-year-old version of you is just something everybody can relate to, mostly because everybody, at least to some extent, once 18 years, is no longer the chronological age. Therefore, the aging rate ideally jumps from 1 to 0 in this function with the cutoff at the 18th birthday. Can remember what being 18 in terms of physiology felt like. If one wants an even easier metric that comes with the downside of some knowledge of mathematics, derivative average rate, then the aging rate optimizable by minimizing till 0, again assuming excluding the growth phase till ideal biological divided by chronological age would make sense. Services, hardware like Garmin and Garmin Connect and other health platforms seemingly are beginning to introduce the concept of various biological clocks in the form, example, Garmin's Fitness Age. The integration and synchronization of health platforms and services is mostly a technical as well as a competition issue. If a metric isn't obvious, it's not of much use. An easy way to make health obvious is by displaying somewhat latent markers that nudge towards short-term positive behavior changes, increasing goal alignment between short-term and long-term you thinking. With its reflective display, Garmin watches currently offer a mix of wearable smartwatches, but also a watch whose display of time is a function that is less impacted by the need for battery optimization, due to otherwise the watch losing its utility. Example, despite watch faces on my Galaxy Watch 4 being available for years, the battery life was so poor that it made the most sense to just not use it as a time metric display device, otherwise further decreasing its utility, already limited due to need to charge it twice a day. To properly monitor one's body, additionally to wearables currently, blood work in its various forms, normal blood panel genetic tests, DNA methylation, etc. are already viable, yet only condensable into a easy-to-read metric that also allows for short-term behavior change when accumulated into an easy metric such as blood age, proteome age. The frequency of tracking ideally approaches infinity all the time, Services like Inside Tracker, blood panel analysis, biological age, and levels or NutriSense, constant blood glucose monitoring, are already available for further insight and tracking, yet not financially reasonable for even average wealthy individuals in comparably wealthy countries. Additionally, if health tracking is just an add-on feature and the reason for the purchase of a device is to have a smartwatch, then the need for just a health tracker, but also the potential discomfort of wearing a health tracker might be reduced. Whoop, for example, offers trackers without a display. Could be beneficial or the opposite. Non-invasive tracking technology has been advancing in recent decades and years. Activity, heart rate, HRV, blood oxygen saturation, skin temperature, barometer, altimeter, and is still in its infancy. Yet already further additions such as non-invasive blood glucose monitoring are in development.